Well, had some stuff happen this week, so I wasn't able to be as prepared as I might have liked to have been. God, now I got everything going off on me. Consequently, much of what you're about to see is ad-libbed. God help us all. Welcome to the Late Stardate, because it's always late somewhere in the world, and I'm your host, Bill Stone. Tonight we have yet again a very special episode of the Late Stardate. I'll be saving the big story that turns this thing into what the thumbnail and it says about this stream. I'll be saving that for when I see enough people having wandered in to make it appropriate for me to do that. Let me move some stuff around here so I can see when people are coming in, which is certainly so far never. So, I'm going to save it, and as I just mentioned, I don't actually have anybody right this instant, because here at the Late Stardate, we have a limited but highly intelligent viewership of literally, not figuratively, fives of viewers. Well, as always, of course, the show is going to be largely audience-driven. We will discuss pretty much anything that you like. There are some subjects that I consider off-limits because they're personal, but they're very few and far between. Because around here, we tend to focus on science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres, though we tend to have one foot grounded in the politics that now plagues our fandoms. But otherwise, we will tonight discuss pretty much anything that you like. We do have some prepared topics. I have a few prepared topics to kill some time while I wait for people to come in and I get to the meat of stuff. Today's prepared topics, are politically what's going on in Canada right now, because I guarantee you, if you don't have a friend that you've known since high school who lives in Canada and can tell you about what's actually going down there, you have no idea what's happening. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how the terrorists, and that's the only way that you can term these people who are going around and destroying people's property, destroying dealerships, destroying the cars at the dealerships. These guys are terrorists. They are people who are looking to advance political goals through violence, particularly directed at civilians. And guess what? That's exactly what they are. These terrorists, they're not just in the United States. You think they're going around in the U.S. and doing this crap. No, they're not. It's around the world, and I'll talk about that. These people also, anybody who's doing this, right, you morons, if you're the ones out there doing this, I'm going to talk about this in much greater detail in a moment, but you do not understand billionaires, okay? You just don't, and I'm going to talk about that. We will get into the fandom side of things. We will talk about how Star Trek's appeal since 1979 has largely been nostalgia. And we'll also talk about how, by rabidly pursuing member berries, that hack fraud, Alex Kurtzman, and his mafia of character assassins have doomed Star Trek to die with millennials. And then, of course, we have the big piece to talk about tonight, Karen Morgan, or a modern-day GenX Fable. It's a very, very long story, as my viewers probably know from last month. If you remember, I was going out to see Karen Morgan. She's a GenX comedian, stand-up comedian. I was going out to see her in Omaha, Nebraska, and that turned into an epic adventure, an epic GenX adventure from multiple perspectives that I'm going to talk about in detail tonight. Okay, here we have some of the stuff I did not script out. So let's talk here while I'm still waiting for people to show up. Let's talk about what's going on in Canada right now. Okay, here's what's actually happening up there. Anything that you've heard to the contrary that's any different than what I'm about to tell you isn't real. Our press does a really terrible job of reporting on domestic matters, and it does a terrible, awful, hideous job reporting on matters overseas, on world politics and the geopolitical stage. Our press is terrible. Terrible, 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 terrible. They're not telling you the truth. Here's what's actually going on up there. The Canadians are pissed. They're pissed because Trump was talking about them being a 51st state, referring to the premier as a governor, blah, blah, blah. That really just kind of pissed them off. They're not, I guess it's not a generational thing because my friend was pissed off too. I mean, I can't see the U.S., people in the U.S. reacting the same way if the situation was reversed. Like if, Canada started referring to the United States as their next province, started referring to the president as a premier of a province. I mean, I don't think we'd give a shit. I think they probably, and this is just me talking, I don't know for sure, but I think they're probably a little bit more sensitive about that up in Canada. Because some Americans tend to have it in their head that it's not really a country. They're just an extension of the United States, which is not true. So we pissed them off with that. If Trump had done everything he'd done, but not done that, then things might be very different right now. But he pissed them off in a big, big way. Pissed them off so much that they're now doing what the terrorists here in the United States are doing. Terrorists here in the U.S., well, we know what's happening with them. They're going after anything Tesla. If you own a Tesla car, there's some greater than non-0% chance that you will see your car in some way vandalized or ripped to shreds. If you have a Tesla dealership, there is some greater than non-0% chance that you will have your dealership attacked, the people who work there attacked, your inventory destroyed. And these are terrorism tactics, because at the end of the day, we're talking about politics. We're talking about using violence to achieve political goals, especially against civilians. Well, this is all against civilians. And so this is terrorism, plain and simple, terrorism. And they're doing it not just in the United States. I was surprised to learn they're also doing it in Canada. And that really surprised me, because Canadians have this kind of a, reputation being laid back. And they kind of are. I mean, I know a fair amount about Canada. I used to drive in and out of Toronto from Chicago as an international courier for several years. So I got to learn a lot about the city and all that at that time. My friend tells me that Toronto's a very different place now. So anyhow, excuse me, they're out there, doing those terrorist tactics, which surprised the crap out of me. They really aren't known for that sort of thing. For them to go out and do that means that they are really, 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 really pissed. And then I got to looking, okay, so I know that Canada isn't like what's going on. They're not doing anything that we think they're doing. I wonder what the rest of the world looks like. Well, as you know, particularly from my last live stream, in which I did another debunking of the press. Hello to whatever viewer it was maybe out there. They're gone again. So I started looking because okay, well, Canada isn't what they say it is. Something else is going on here. So I looked around and I looked at overseas news. And because of, how nothing you see in the press is real, nothing, I had to spend a lot of time debunking and finding what I like to call patient zero, the place where the story originated. I did a bunch of that research. And when I did it, I discovered that around the world, people are doing these terrorist tactics against Tesla. Tesla cars owned by individuals, Tesla cars owned by, as I say, a dealership, the dealership itself, the people who work there, the people who own the Teslas. All of you guys are in, potential distress. You are potentially having a problem here. It's all over the freaking world. I couldn't believe it. And hi to whomever is actually out there watching me. I couldn't believe it. I started looking around, and it's all over the world. It's not just the United States. It's not just Canada. All over the world, idiots are going around and destroying all things Tesla because they think it's going to hurt Elon Musk somehow. Okay. You guys who are doing this, you're probably not watching me, but if you ever happen to see me, let me explain. Let me mansplain something to you, and you can go ahead and say, "Okay, boomer," but this is reality. You do not understand how billionaires operate. Billionaires do not just have one business. They do not just have one thing that they're invested in. They are invested across a whole huge, humongous number of things. And when it comes to something like Tesla or even X, Elon Musk does have a responsibility to make sure that the companies do make money. However, if they don't make money, it's not going to be a problem for him. Tesla can go completely out of business and it wouldn't matter in the slightest, because people who are like him have something down pat that the rest of us have to suffer and work for all of our lives. We spend a third to 2/3 of our lives doing it, maybe sometimes more. And that's just in, nice first world countries. What happens is they have what they have going for them that they never have to worry about, and everybody else does, is survival. They are so loaded and so divested of everything everywhere that Tesla can go out of business and it doesn't matter. Elon Musk is still going to be a billionaire. He is still going to have, just surviving down pat for the next 5 generations of his family. That's how loaded the guy is. You can destroy all things Tesla. You can cause Tesla to go completely under, and it is not going to impact Elon Musk in the slightest. It's not going to cause him the slightest bit of pain at all. So, go ahead and do what you're going to do, but it doesn't matter. All that you're succeeding in doing is turning yourself into a terrorist. In our case here in the U.S., a domestic terrorist. And when you look at it, right, I'm not somebody who goes in for, conspiracy theories. I'm really not. But if you look at it and you see all of this stuff happening simultaneously all over the freaking world, you have to wonder if it isn't somehow coordinated. I don't know. I really don't know. I hate thinking along those lines. I really do. But it's going on everywhere simultaneously. And so it makes you wonder if maybe these terrorist attacks aren't in some way, orchestrated. I don't think so. I think what you really have is a bunch of people who are what the Soviets used to call useful idiots. They're just idiots. They will do whatever you tell them to do. They're leftists, so anything that a leftist tells them to do, they will do it. And they don't stop to think that what they're doing with Tesla in no way impacts Elon Musk. It doesn't matter. It doesn't impact him in the slightest. You guys are doing nothing but wasting your own time, and simultaneously you are committing acts of terrorism, and at the same time, you're really the only people that you're making hurt are non-billionaires, which is everybody who works for Elon Musk. Whether they're at a dealership or anywhere else, all you're doing is hurting them. You're not hurting Elon. You cannot hurt Elon by making Tesla go out of business. You can't hurt him financially at all. It's impossible to hurt Elon Musk financially. Just quit. There's no point. Forget about it. So, those are my thoughts on that. Unfortunately, I'm getting in here to about 15 minutes with nobody here. So I guess what I'm going to do, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get into the Spanish portion of this. Maybe if somebody pops in, they'll be more interested in while listening to that. So, as I've said, I believe, as frankly, a former fan of the franchise through multiple creators, producers, and showrunners, one of the things that's become clear to me is that ever since Star Trek, the original series, ceased production, Star Trek's appeal has mostly almost exclusively been nostalgia. So for fans like me who've been around a while, and since 1967 in my case, we need to think back a little bit. Because during that seemingly interminable period between 1969 and 1979, we repeatedly made it clear to Paramount Pictures that we wanted more Star Trek. We clamored so loud that when we turned our energies to far more consequential matters, we were able to convince the U.S. federal government to change the name of the first space shuttle from Constitution to Enterprise. But what kind of Star Trek did we really want? Did we really want all brand new adventures in which they told all brand new stories, taking our known familiar characters in all new directions? Or did we really just want more of what we'd had before, with a couple of new twists? Well, to my mind, the original cast movies speak for themselves. We have first Star Trek, the motion picture. This film is essentially a very big budget, very impressively looking with special effects, mashup of the original series episodes, The Changeling and The Doomsday Machine. We weren't getting anything new there. Then we had Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which is considered to be quite possibly the best movie in the entire franchise, and arguably the best Star Trek ever made, although I think you're going to have to fight people for City on the Edge of Forever for that. But Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was a sequel to the original series episode Space Seed, which was a good thing, because if you're going to make a sequel of an original series episode, Space Seed is definitely a good candidate. Because what most people don't really understand is that Ricardo Montalban sold that role. No other actor will ever do it justice. And he was nice and theatrical. He had a presence about him. He was perfect for the big screen. Amazingly, Star Trek II was able to explore some themes about aging and death in a way that modern Star Trek will never achieve. And why? Because Star Trek from 1966-2005 was a subgenre of science fiction that fans like to call space opera. Star Trek is a really good example of space opera. It examined big ideas from an adult perspective. Now, modern Star Trek has far more in common with soap opera. As a consequence, they can only produce soap opera. There are no big ideas, and the perspective is juvenile at best. Then we have Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. It is a narrative sequel to Star Trek II. It was almost, in a way, kind of a filler movie that needed to happen. They had to reverse Spock's death because Leonard Nimoy had a terrible, terrible experience making Star Trek the motion picture. He only came back to Star Trek II on the condition that they would kill off Spock, thereby releasing him from ever having to worry about Star Trek ever again. But then he had a good time on Star Trek II and wanted to come back for another movie. So they had to reverse his death, and they had to set the franchise on the path to reversing what happened in Star Trek II and any big significant changes to the characters. And why was this done? Well, real simple. To make the films more like the original series. Then we get Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the movie that was a big crossover. Star Trek does not have a wide appeal. And if you try to deal with it as if it does, you're being an idiot. Star Trek does not have a wide appeal. There have only been 2 or 3 instances in the entire history of the franchise where you got a crossover hit. And that was one of the first ones, really, was Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Now, this was a narrative sequel to Star Trek III, making up the final part of what fans sometimes call the Star Trek trilogy. However, much of the story was disconnected from the other films. And again, this was done to narratively revert to the original series. The film is about the main and supporting characters, and that is all. And while the ship isn't the Enterprise, this film proved to fans that Star Trek was about the characters, not the ship that they fly in. Not that it mattered, since they got a new Enterprise out of the deal, and thus completing the transition back to essentially where they were at the original series. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, was a sequel only inasmuch as it came next in the movie series. It wasn't a narrative sequel to anything. And while William Shatner had bigger visions for it, narratively, ultimately, it's something that was a trope in Star Trek even in 1989. A powerful entity claims to be God or a god, and the crew discover that in fact it's a godlike alien. Even then, we called them Yaglas, which stood for yet another godlike alien. They're so prevalent in Star Trek. Q is probably the best example of a Yagla, but you will find them up and down throughout the entire franchise. Finally, for the original cast movies, we had Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. It was a narrative sequel to Star Trek IV. If Star Trek 2 through 4 can kind of be thought of as a trilogy, Star Trek 6 is kind of a coda to that trilogy. Heinemann viewer out there. Everything about Star Trek 6 is some kind of callback to the original series or a call forward to the Next Generation, which was into its 5th season by the time the film was released. So with only one exception, all of the films were some kind of sequel to prior Star Trek. The only non-sequeled movie recycled an incredibly common Star Trek trope. So did we really get all new Star Trek with those films? Or did we just get basically member berries with varying degrees of success? I would suggest that we mostly got member berries. The only really new character elements were in Star Trek II, all of which were just totally forgotten or reversed until Star Trek VI. So Star Trek VI, it's really interesting what it does. It's not only a wonderful series finale for the original cast, and it wasn't just serving up member berries from the original series and Next Generation, it was also serving up member berries from its own prior films. I don't know what sort of weird, sort of incestuous thing you call that, but they were doing it. So next, because it comes in order of when the shows came out, let's consider Star Trek: The Next Generation. Narratively, the series is neither a reboot nor a remake, and I hate when people get that wrong. It is a direct sequel to everything in the franchise's 1966 to 2005 history that had preceded it up to 1987. It attempted to recapture lightning in a bottle. Nobody thought it could be done. I'm kind of amazed it was done myself, because it had to balance new characters, not the ones we saw before, and a new ensemble-style format. You see, the original series was not an ensemble show, and I will actually have more to say about that probably sooner rather than later, but it won't be tonight. Next Gen also served up a fairly decent helping of member berries. So there are 3 seemingly impossible things that they had to try to balance: new characters, ensemble format, and member berries. It is frankly amazing that the show lasted more than one season. Hi to the 2 viewers I seem to have out there right now. Thanks for being here. Talking a bit about where the Star Trek franchise has been going. Ultimately, with Next Gen, the showrunners just decided to simply let the character and format speak for themselves. Member berries were served in a general show format, which was really identical to the original series. They were also served by maintaining some meticulous level of continuity with prior lore and mentioning it on occasion. However, it wasn't mired in prior lore. By making the series a direct continuation, some 78 years after the original series cast films, it gave them the narrative space to tell all new stories with all new things that add to the existing lore. They did that really well. Next Gen really was a sequel intended for fans of the original series. It was member berries. However, it was also something that we could show to our children. In the Next Gen era spawned 2 spin-offs, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and 1 narrative prequel, Enterprise. This meant that our children, the children of Gen Xers, who were millennials and also early Gen Z, our children from 1987 to 2005, a full 18 years, that is an entire generation, 18 years, literally, not figuratively, literally grew up with Star Trek, particularly in Next Generation. And that, by the way, is why some fans preferred the 3rd season of Picard. It was nostalgia, heaping up heaps upon heaps of nostalgia member berries for our children, primarily. Just heaps of them. Callbacks and fan services abounded through that year, which brings us rather neatly to the modern incarnation of the franchise. It's only member berries. It has been since that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins took the wheel. There is absolutely nothing new about it. It's all just member berries. Worse, it's what that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins consider to be more adult material, but in fact, it's adolescent soap opera tripe. However, because of the cursing and the sex, our children dare not show our grandchildren modern Star Trek. This means that when our grandchildren grow up, there will be no clamoring for more Star Trek because they are not going to grow up with it. By providing nothing more than fan service, Star Trek is now doomed to die with the millennials. Oh, they'll reboot. They'll make multiple times in the next 10 to 20 years. We've seen it all over the place. They're following the exact same course that they did with comic books. They'll reboot, make multiple reboots multiple times in the next 10 years. To be honest, I think it's probably going to play itself out at about 10 years from now, if not sooner. Star Trek is definitely on the way out. And the new arc incarnation, the modern incarnation, is fantastically unsuccessful. Half a sec while I make a setting change here real quick inside of YouTube. All right. I really hadn't realized just how fantastically unsuccessful modern incarnation of Star Trek is. Paramount doesn't, not Paramount, but Paramount, Viacom, CBS, who the hell, whoever the hell's running the show, it's impossible to know anymore. But hey, Jeanette, how you doing? Glad to see you here talking a bit about the Star Trek franchise. Anyway, I hadn't really realized just exactly how incredibly unsuccessful it was. Until last year, just before I moved where I am now, and I was getting my hair cut at the same place I always got it done for years. And one of the people, because I never care who does my hair, it's real simple. The person I was doing, we got into a conversation about Star Trek, and I started talking about the current incarnation of Star Trek. He thought I was talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation and the series that came around after it. He had no idea that Paramount is currently making any new Star Trek. Not a clue. And this was a guy who, from talking to him, I could tell, clearly a fan of Next Generation, but not a clue that Star Trek Picard exists. Not the slightest clue. The only people that really, are we can kind of thank our lucky stars, to be honest, that Star Trek is on its way out. The only fans that it attracts, and this is something that really bugs me, the only fans that it attracts, and I say fans loosely, are a tiny audience of very woke a-holes. Because remember, kids, if you grew up with social media, you're probably an a-hole. And they grew up with social media, and they're loud, they're vociferous, and they're impossible to deal with. I've got a show coming up. I don't know exactly how far in the future, but it will be one. When I start talking about how I have officially started to distance myself from Star Trek fandom. Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, any of our beloved franchises that I grew up with, I now have to distance myself from because I don't want to be associated with a modern incarnation, and most especially, I do not want to be associated with the fans. They're jerks. They're complete a-holes. There was a guy when I was first getting into online fandom in the late 1980s, early 1990s, coinciding roughly with Star Trek: The Next Generation. And excuse me, Frack. Remember how I said in the teaser, I said that I hadn't, there's some stuff I hadn't scripted? Well, this was one of them, boys and girls, that story about my barber. In any case, he had no idea. No idea. And if the only people that you can get to figure out that you have a series running is the woke, there are not enough of them to make anything successful. There just aren't. There aren't enough woke. The phrase "get woke, go broke" is a real thing for a real reason. There are not enough woke people in the world to support, trying to make modern Star Trek successful. So there we are, boys and girls. If you grew up with social media, you're probably an a-hole. You may be woke, but I think that's eventually going to work itself out. Anyway, that's where we are. That's where we are with Star Trek. The idiots in charge of it have set it up to fail. Set it up so that there will be no more next generation of Star Trek fans because they're not able to watch Star Trek today. The reason that we had more Star Trek after 1969 was because we kept clamoring for it, and there were enough people to get to, make reasonable budgeted movies. Just enough to make reasonable ones. So, anyway, Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins are taking Star Trek into a place that is not going to be someplace where my grandchildren are, and somebody else in that generation. But that generation, the Gen Z, late Gen Zs, Gen Alpha, they're not going to have grown up with Star Trek like the millennials and Gen Z did. They're not having 18 years of it. They're not able to watch that Star Trek because of the swearing and the gratuitous sex. They're not able to watch it. A parent cannot plunk their kid down in front of any Star Trek made by Alex Kurtzman or his mafia of character assassins. You just can't. You don't know what you'll be exposing them to. Without those guys watching more Star Trek, the way that Gen Z and millennials watched Star Trek The Next Generation and its spin-offs for 18 frackin' years, they watched those growing up. They literally grew up watching those shows. And so when we're not giving them something new to watch, that means that the next generation of human beings is not going to give a rat's ass about Star Trek. So that's where we are. So, well, I got 2 concurrent viewers, apparently. So, as I mentioned to Karen Morgan herself, which is where this is going to branch off and become a GenX story time, when I mentioned it to Karen Morgan herself, she said, well, keep me in the loop. But I mentioned to her that this podcast has an audience of literally, not figuratively, literally, 5s of people. It's a small audience, it's a limited audience, but it's a very intelligent one, made up of literally 5s of people. So that being the case, I'll go ahead and do my GenX story time because it's what I advertised on the thumbnail. So gather round, boys and girls. It's time for old Uncle Bill to read you yet another bedtime story from the big book of GenX Fables. And this time we'll be talking about something that happened very recently to me. We'll be talking about Karen Morgan, who is not the Karen that you think of when you hear the name. As always, I like to tell people about GenX. Officially, GenX is defined as anyone born between 1965 and 1980, making about 62.5 million of us alive today. We are generally children of baby boomers and maybe some very young greatest generation, though for some reason, millennials and Gen Z tend to refer to us as boomers. I guess apparently to them, older people are just like black people to racists, and we all look alike. I am actually one of the very earliest model Gen Xers, born on January 14th, 1965. We are the last feral generation. We grew up in an era without the internet and without cell phones. In fact, it was us standing on the shoulders of the giants who came before us, allowed us, those of us, especially me in IT and computer science, to commercialize the internet and bring everything that goes along with it. So, you're welcome. Aside from playing with friends, our entertainment often came from television. However, TV wasn't really oriented to us. We watched some cartoons before and after school and Saturday mornings, and prior to about noon, were filled with nothing but children's programming. And this ranged from classic Looney Tunes to some rather stupid shows to a few live-action programs. All the other programming throughout the entire rest of the week was intended for families or adults rather than just children. Now, Karen Morgan is an excellent Gen X comedian, and a link to her stand-up set defining the generations, and particularly Gen X, is in my description box below. It's called Every Generation Explained, Karen Morgan. A link to that. If you're watching on repeat, go ahead, go off, click that link, go watch that set, come back to me. She's awesome. Don't do it if you're watching live. If you're watching live, please stay here. I need every viewer I've got. So... now, I used to introduce my Gen X fables by ripping off Karen Morgan. But after seeing her perform, I realized that I can't do that. I discovered, just watching, that she is actively using the bit that I was ripping off in her current stand-up comedy tour. And I can't go ripping off something that somebody's making money off of. It's I thought, because I'd seen the video in question is several years old. I thought, oh, okay, by this time she's not using that. Oh, thanks for staying, Jeanette. I appreciate it very much. At least have one viewer through this madness. So, yeah. Anyhow, she's Karen Morgan is a really interesting individual because I went to see her there, and I noticed, as I said, she's actively using the material that she had in that video. And because of that, you're talking then, it's not just like me repeating something that George Carlin said. He's never going to make a dime from it again, right? His days of making money from jokes are over. So if I'm stealing from him, I don't feel too bad about it. But if I'm stealing from somebody who's actually using this to make money, no, I can't do that anymore. No, I can't. So apologies, Karen, if you happen to be watching this. I did alert her that she is going to be talked about in depth on this show. And she let me know that she has a show of her own tonight, not surprisingly, it being a Friday night. So anyway, I went to see her. I went to see her perform. I have been thrilled with Karen Morgan ever since I first saw that video that I mentioned. It's in the description box below. I've been thrilled with her ever since then. She's freaking wonderful to watch. She's Gen X through and through, and her humor is based largely around our shared experience as Gen Xers growing up, and not about her genitalia, which is kind of unusual for a female comedian. So to talk about her specifically, I stole this off of her website, which is KarenMorgan.com, by the way. Go there, KarenMorgan.com/tour. There's a link to that in my description box below. Get tickets to go and see Karen Morgan. She's freaking awesome. But she was born and raised in Athens, Georgia, but now calls Maine home. She has 2 dry bar comedy specials, which I have seen both of them. In fact, I signed up for dry bar comedy just so I could watch these 2 shows, and then I dropped the subscription afterwards. But the 2 that she has on there are Rub Some Dirt on It from 2023, which is named number 4 in Dry Bar Comedy's top 10 clips of 2023. And Go Dogs 2020. The one from 2023, I believe, is where the material that I used to steal is located, but don't quote me on that. She was recently featured, Karen was, on The Talk on CBS. Her latest audio album, Shiny Happy People Laughing, can currently be heard exclusively on Sirius XM radio channels. She is still licensed to practice law in Maine and Georgia. She was a trial attorney before turning to stand-up comedy, amazingly enough. She describes this, by the way, as a lateral career move on the org chart. She lives now in Cumberland, Maine, where she's an avid open water swimmer, which probably explains why she's aged so much better than me. And she enjoys traveling for shows, which is a good thing because she's been bouncing all over the upper Great Plains. It's not like old days where you used to go on a straight line from one place to another. They just bounce all over the country. She particularly enjoys going to places where there's a Waffle House, but sadly, I looked it up. The nearest Waffle House to the Omaha Funny Bone is in St. Joseph, Missouri, about halfway between Omaha and Kansas City. So, oh well. So this right here, this is Karen Morgan. As you can see, she's Gen X comedian. She is my freaking age. She mentioned at her show that she's 60 years old. Just like me, which makes her probably, from listening to her talk, very early, just like me. I don't know for sure, but clearly Gen X, okay? So I ended up turning this whole thing to go see her into a giant production that has to be told as its own little Gen X story, because it is a Gen X story. It just happened to me as an adult rather than a child. I ended up running all over the Upper Great Plains. Just all over. Oh, God, Jeanette, hope you're still there. I ended up running all over the Great Plains. Because here I am in Wall, South Dakota, right? Not quite to the edge of the state on the western side, so I'm in Wall. And Wall, I had to make the trip from Wall all the way across South Dakota, down through Nebraska, and then to Omaha. If you're just looking at it on Google Maps, if you have, go the 80 miles per hour speed limit that's available on I-90, and if you don't take any breaks, and if you don't stop for any meals, and you got a good tailwind, and you're 65 miles an hour in a little straight and level grade, which you don't have all the time, if you do that, it's about 8 hours to get from here to Omaha. Thanks, Jeanette. Glad to see you. The interface here on YouTube just sucks. So anyway, I'm looking at an 8-hour-ish drive to go and see her. I had the option at one point of going to see her in Kearney, Nebraska. It was actually a bigger venue. But I decided to go to Omaha because I was going to do some other things. I decided one thing I was going to do was go see friends in Des Moines. And Des Moines is only an hour and a half, 2 hours from Omaha. So that was a good deal. I got there the first night after 10-hour drive, something like that. Stayed the night, spent the next couple of days with friends, and the next day or so with friends, next day or two, I don't remember now, with friends, and had a good old time. Then I had to drive from Des Moines to Lincoln, Nebraska. Well, that's only a drive of about 3 hours. And I have made that drive over and over and over again. I know every inch of the drive on I-80 from from Des Moines to where I-680 starts, then I-680 to where it meets up with I-80 again, because I-680 goes around Omaha rather than through it, and I hate going through Omaha. It sucks. It's got lots and lots of traffic, just like any big city. I know every freaking inch of this drive, and it drives me insane. Jeanette says, got home, switched from phone to laptop. Okay, probably cool. Thank you. By the way, if you hear anything that sounds like a fan going on, let me know, because I've been moving around this big fan I've got on me. Anyway, so I went there. Then I decided to go to Lincoln, Nebraska. So why was I going to Lincoln, Nebraska? Well, the last thing that I left behind there when I moved from Lincoln to Wall late last summer was roughly 50 gallons of gas. I had bought them when the gas was much cheaper, worrying that maybe it would get too expensive. So I bought 50 gallons, and it was stored, unfortunately, in a bunch of 10-gallon gas cans, plastic gas cans. So I ordered a gas caddy. What that basically is a little mobile, if you can call 50 gallons, mobile-ish carrier for gasoline. You can fill it up. It's used in agriculture to some extent, because you can drag this gas around to wherever you might need it in terms of vehicle or something like that. So I bought one of these. And they don't deliver them to Wall, South Dakota. Now, this is bizarre, because on 2 occasions I have been going out to my family ranch land that I now own 3/5 of, the Davis Homestead Reserve, which is probably what I'll call it. Twice I have been on my way out to the reserve, and I have seen an Amazon truck screaming through at speeds that I would not approach, because it's gravel. It's all gravel, and depending on when it was last graded, my Jeep does not corner like anything. I can make 55 miles an hour out there, but anytime I get to a corner, I got to slow down or I will slide off into the ditch. Okay, so I have to get the gas. And like I say, amazingly, Amazon just goes straight through Wall and out 60 miles or so to the reserve and drop stuff off at the bottom of the hill, which is where everybody drops stuff off, the bottom of this big-ass hill before you go in. And so I thought, all right, well, how the hell am I going to get this thing since they won't deliver it to Wall, and I don't want to drive all the way out there and deal with having to get it then. How am I going to do this? So I thought, okay, I'll just send it to my niece in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's where the gas is. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's going to be around to sign for it if needs be because it's kind of expensive. So I went to Lincoln, and I'm rocking my Jeep Wrangler rather than the Toyota Prius that I bought explicitly for drives like this one. I bought the Prius because I'm really going to have only 3 kinds of drives left now. I'm going to have, for the rest of my life, I'm going to have drives out to see family. Those are going to be long and suck up gas, which is one of the reasons I have the Prius. I'm going to have trips from here into Rapid City or nearby cities. And those are trips of an hour or so that, again, work better when you have a lower mileage vehicle. And then I have trips out to the family ranch land, out to the Davis Homestead Reserve. And that is all for my Jeep because you get into some backwoods country there that you really kind of need it. So the Jeep has basically been retired for use doing that. The Toyota Prius is now used everywhere else. I thought I would take the Prius down to Lincoln with me because, you see, I'm Gen X. And when I was a child, they used to rent hitches. They rented these standalone hitches for trailers that you could attach to the undercarriage of your car because cars were made out of things like steel back then. And then you would, you would just attach in there. You would rent it from U-Haul. Hook your trailer onto the end of that thing and just go to town with it. So I figured, all right, I will make this the first time that I'm not spending an exorbitant amount of money to drive to see my family. What I'll do is I'll take the Prius and I'll rent myself a hitch. No, I should have seen it. No, they don't do that anymore. They don't rent hitches anymore. You have to have one or they will sell you one, but they don't rent them. And I should have seen that coming because cars today are made in such a way that I'm not sure if you could even attach an aftermarket, just, sort of a clip-on thing that's not attached to your vehicle in some major way. So as it happens, I do have a trailer hitch on my Jeep. So I was rocking my Jeep everywhere I was going for this trip. So, I'm in Lincoln now at this point on Saturday, March 26th. And the next day, Sunday, March 27th, was the day of Karen Morgan headlining at the Omaha, Nebraska Funny Bone. You love your Jeep. Me too, Jeanette. I love the thing. I bought it explicitly for the purpose that it's doing now. I just went, after several trips back and forth to see my relatives, I went, Jesus, you're just going to spend an inordinate amount of money. Because, going out for some birthdays, all the holidays, I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to suck up so much money in gas. Which is why I got that Prius. But I couldn't drive it because I needed the hitch. So here we are, the 27th, the day that Karen is performing. And it was a beautiful frackin' day. It was awesome. The temperature was a nice 72 degrees. It was sunny out. There was not a cloud in the sky. And I needed to make about an hour 15-ish drive from Lincoln to the Funny Bone. And something happens that has never happened before with my Jeep. My Jeep is a hardtop, but it has 2 sections that you can take off. And, basically you get the section over the driver and the passenger seat is open. I have never been able to take off those 2 things, chuck them in the back, and drive for any length of time. When I've done it, it's because it's been so nice out that I couldn't help myself taking them off when I went to the doctor or run some errands or whatever. But this was a full hour and a half-ish in the Jeep, going from Omaha to Lincoln in really wonderful weather, and it was grand. I don't get to do it much anymore. It was, in fact, bordering on a midlife crisis moment. So much so, in fact, that I went out and got one of my Spotify playlists that has a lot of orchestral film music in it. Cranked the volume to, made sure my windows were down. Not that it mattered because everything above me was down. Cranked the volume and drove around in Omaha with that thing blaring so loud. Just totally different from what your average idiot blares, which is, rock music and stuff like that. This was nothing but symphonic film scores. You're hearing the theme from Star Wars coming out, all of that stuff. I just figured, what the hell, as long as I'm out here doing a moment, I might as well just do it for real. So I get out there, and the Funny Bone is located in the Village Point Mall. And I say mall because it's not a mall like Gen Xers do it. You do that hardcore, do you? Yeah, I mean, I do it from time to time. I have most frequently done it where I've really cranked the volume up when I pull up next to somebody who's causing the concrete to vibrate, So I'm going like, okay, fine. We'll just crank up some John Williams on you there. How about some theme from Star Wars all the way up, turned up to 11. So anyhow, I went to the Village Point Mall. This thing was not really a mall. Not that we do think of it as Gen Xers. To begin with, it was outdoors. It was not enclosed. That may be a fine thing when you're a little south of us, where it's a little warmer, or if you're out on the East Coast or West Coast, particularly the West Coast, where it's nice and warm all the time. Walking from store to store outdoors makes sense. When you're here in a place that has, 10 degree below winters with 2 feet of snow, and summers that can get up to 120 degrees with no heat index. The heat index is even higher than that. Nobody wants to be outside in that miserable weather. That's why our malls were always indoor malls, because you needed the indoor space for people to congregate. The point was to try to keep people in the malls, keep them in there and spending money. And the way to do that in the Upper Great Plains is to put your malls indoors. If you don't, nobody's going to show up. And it was utterly deserted that weekend. I mean, totally deserted. And it was nice out. And it was a Sunday. I mean, Jesus, for Gen X, if it had been a Sunday, everybody had been at the mall, Jeanette says, hardcore. New songs played on old instruments like a traveling band would play. Cool. Sung in Latin or Roman. Okay, that's a step beyond what I've done. But so anyway, it was totally deserted. And I'm like, what does this place look like when it's not a weekend? Or what does it look like when it's particularly hot or particularly cold? No, real Gen X malls are indoors in my part of the country. There was also no food court. I'm sorry, real malls have a food court. There were lots of restaurants. It's an outdoor thing with multiple restaurants and stuff. But there was no food court. There was no place that was really selling cheap-ass food, from 3 different styles of food that were all from chains, so they weren't really, that great. But, I mean, you could get them for cheap. There were lots of them. They were all in one place. You could take your kids, and I did with mine. Interesting fact. Those of you who are men who have access to babies, borrow a relative's baby and take it to whatever amounts to a mall now. I mean, back when I was doing that, I was doing it because I was going to school and watching my kid at the same time. So I would get frazzled to the point where I needed to go to the mall just to get my head and back on straight, just to get out of everything I was doing. And so I would take my kid to the mall, real young, under 18 months old. And it was a chick magnet. I had no idea it was a complete chick magnet. Every woman in the joint, regardless of age, wanted to come up and talk to me and stuff like that. Little kids are a chick magnet. If you want to attract girls, guys, get a hold of a small child, put it in a stroller, and wander around where there's lots of women. They will flock to you. Did with me. And the really weird part about it was out there, just in terms of the location. The really weird part about that was Um, when I was growing up, because I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was in and out of Omaha all the time because I went to school there for several years. So I know a lot about how the city was when I was growing up. I don't know a hell of a lot about it aside from the places that haven't changed much now. And one of the things that I knew intellectually but didn't get it into my skull until I was out there, was that this was a spot that when I was growing up. Hey, Patrick, nice to see you. Thank you very much. Yes, I am live on tape from Hollywood. The weird part about it was when I was going to Omaha with any frequency, that entire area where this mall was located was nothing but farmland. Farmland as far as the eye could see. The nearest thing to anything like civilization out there was Boys Town. Now Omaha has stretched out to the part where it actually touches and has gone past a little bit where Boys Town is. This was all farmland. I'm just looking around going, my God, this is just all farmland. Old man Peabody used to own all of this. He used to have this crazy dream about breeding pine trees. Anyway, if you know where that's from, you get 5 points. Unfortunately, the points are all made up and they don't matter. Yes, the points are just like clothes to a green Orion slave girl. They just don't matter. There was one place that I spent a fair amount of time in when I was fooling around at the mall there, waiting because I'd gotten there a couple of hours early. So I'm waiting around. I went to the Shields. Shields All Sports. If you don't know, Shields is a chain. I don't know if they're all over the U.S., but they're certainly in my part of the U.S., the Upper Great Plains. I've seen them multiple places. They're a chain of sporting goods stores, but one of the things that they do have that's really awesome is a huge supply of guns and a huge supply of ammunition. I actually have about 600 or 700 rounds of ammo, practice ammo mostly, that I'm going to be picking up from the Shields in Rapid City the next time I'm there. So this Shields wasn't as big as the one in Rapid. The one in Rapid is freaking-normous. The one in Rapid is so big that they have to have both greeters and guides. And that's literally necessary. The first 3 times I went there, had I not had a guide to show me how to get to the firearms department, I might never have found it. I could have done a freaking circle search or done, back and forth through the aisles. That place is ginormous. It covers at least an entire city block with 2 stories. Maybe more than an entire city block. Because here's what I think happened, knowing what I do about that place. I think what happened was Shields bought the land when there was basically nothing out there. So they owned this huge chunk of land. And what grew up around it as an anchor store, and there were a couple of other department stores like I think Target's out there. What grew up around it was a strip mall, an outdoor mall. So it grew up around it. And actually, that mall has a lot more people than the one I saw in Omaha. So that place is ginormous, and I love that place. I can sit and go around in Shields for my entire I go around. Sorry, I got distracted by what Patrick said here. I don't. Where was I? God, this is where I was vamping. The size of it. So it's ginormous. I love the place. I go there anytime I'm in Wall just to look around, even though it does take me about 8 minutes to walk from the front door over to where they have the guns. But I go there all the time. So I went into this one in Omaha, and that one was a much smaller one. And I understand what had happened there. What had happened there was the mall was built, and then the developers sold some of the space or rented some of the space to Shields. So it's not nearly as big. It's still a large building, but not nearly as ginormous. So I'm going in there and wandering around, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is a decently sized building. This is actually the size of some very small malls. Interior-wise, it's big. And they make excellent use of the space. And they don't have a food court, but they do now have their own restaurant internally. And Gen Xers may remember, we're familiar with restaurants inside of stores. They used to have them inside of Kmart's. The Kmart in Lincoln, Nebraska used to make the best hoagie sandwiches on the freaking planet. I haven't run into anybody that makes them as good as they did, so I miss those guys. Let me see what Patrick has to say here. Judge from my face that I didn't take notice of your name too much. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Patrick. You're from the past, Trek Echo. Yeah, I know. 30 years later, is it? Yes, you're guessing this is a good topic for your stream, so feel free. Yeah, you actually missed. Sadly, I did about 10 minutes while I was waiting for people to show up. I did about 10 minutes on Star Trek. Yep, never too much ammo, Jeanette says. But yeah, I did a big chunk on Star Trek. If you want to go back and watch it after it's done, here's my theory. Here is my thesis. The people in charge of Star Trek now have put it in a position where you cannot let children watch it. Consequently, 20 or 30 years from now, when when my grandchildren are grown up, they will not have grown up with Star Trek the way that people did from 1987 all the way through to 2005. 18 years. My children grew up with Star Trek. No wonder they want more of it. And now it's in a position where they cannot show their children Star Trek. And not showing them Star Trek means that when those kids get older, there will be no demand for new Star Trek. So that's what I had. It's a lengthy thing. I did about 10 minutes on it. And Patrick, you might be interested in that. Very true. They weren't interested in building the audience like original series and Next Gen did. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that too in the thing. And as you know very well, the thing about Patrick and I is we go way back. You know, Patrick is an example of somebody that you cannot find today. I have never met Patrick in person, but we have been friends for decades because we met online and we met in a time and a place where there wasn't social media and there wasn't all the insanity that we have now. We had a few rules on that online forum. You know, you couldn't bring up, religion or politics or gay stuff, because all it ever turned into was a giant feeding frenzy and a horrible feeding frenzy. So they didn't. Oh God, now I've lost myself here. Very kind, Bill. 1, be polite and don't talk about James Dixon. I've done that on this show, from believe it or not. I give James Dixon a lot of credit. Now, people will not know who James Dixon is besides Patrick and I. James Dixon, to put it as succinctly as I possibly can, was the forefather of the modern people on social media. He was very intelligent, very well spoken, could write really well, but went on and would just drive you completely insane. He was often very abusive in his language, and we let him stay on there, but we had to kick him off from time to time. He was horrifying. But looking back, this is a guy who was truly ahead of his time. And not only that, he taught me to be a better writer. Because of him, I'm a much better writer today. Thanks, James. So, anyhow, so there I am. I'm at the Shield, at Star Trek. Let me think here. What else can I say about that? Yeah, huge mistake not to make it so the kids can't watch. Yeah, that dumbass mistake. As I said in the 10 or so minutes I did on it, my thesis is that Star Trek's appeal since 1969 has been nostalgia. And I went on in some length about that. So what we have now is nostalgia for Next Gen. In 20 years, nothing that's going on right now is going to be anything that generates nostalgia feelings. It's just not. So, that's where Star Trek is, and that's what I was talking about that. So, getting back to Karen Morgan. As I said, Patrick said, like Jay Haley said, they have moved on to getting a more limited audience the best way they know how. Yeah, unfortunately, you're dealing with people. You may not have heard me say this, Patrick, but I call them that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins. They can't do adult science fiction. They can only do soap opera, gratuitous sex, and gratuitous swearing. I don't know how anybody thinks this is Star Trek, but Patrick says, especially in this day when the equivalent of a 2.0 rating is amazing. Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I mentioned in my Star Trek rant. It is modern incarnation. It's so unbelievably unpopular that a next-gen fan, an actual next-gen fan who happened to be cutting my hair one day, had no idea that they've been making new Star Treks since 2017. And that was late last year when he did that. We got in that conversation. He has no idea. Picard, the series that is aimed straight at him, he has no idea it even exists. Not a clue. When we talked about modern Star Trek, he thought I was talking about Next Gen and the series that came on there. No, I was talking about the crap that Alex Kurtzman makes. But no, he was talking about Next Gen. He had no idea. If you can't get Next Gen fans, if your marketing can't reach them, then you've got something horrifyingly wrong. So, anyway, back on Karen Morgan, the GenX comedian. Lots of links to her stuff in my description box below. Go and check out at least Every Generation Explained by Karen Morgan. It's a great little video. And she does it in her stand-up set, I now know, from having gone to see her last month. So, the show was great. I got mildly drunk because I'm a lightweight, and I hadn't had anything to eat yet, and so I had 2 mixed drinks and pretty much got wasted. Fortunately, I was eating something, and it was going to be a good 2 to 3 hours between the time that I'd inadvertently gotten wasted and misjudged and when I was going to need to be driving, so I was okay by the time the show was over. But I went back, and I was chatting with Karen a little bit, told her about my, because she also talks about, dodgeball. So I told her about my dodgeball sports injury, which I enjoy telling that story from time to time. So I chatted with her just a little bit, made her take some money from me. This right here is the current tour, which is unsupervised and dehydrated. As I said, she's a Gen X comedian with a lot of material regarding Gen X. And so unsupervised and dehydrated is the perfect name for her current tour. Because that's what we were growing up, unsupervised and dehydrated. So anyhow, I'm all set with Karen. I mean, I didn't take up too much of her time because I figured she, other people wanted to talk to her and stuff. So I didn't do much with it. I just, hi, bye. Because she knew I was coming, actually. We'd had a little communication beforehand. I thought of myself as the nitwit who drove across 2 states to see her, which is more or less accurate. I decided to use her going to see her, make this other trip. So we just chat a little bit. I take off. I'm sober now, fortunately. The food and a couple of hours with nothing but water to drink sobered me up. So I'm driving back to Lincoln, and it's about an hour drive, and it's late, so it's not like, it's not like driving out there. I have to have the top on my Jeep. So I'm driving back, and I get about 6 blocks from where I'm staying with my nephew, and I hit a bump because the streets in Lincoln, Nebraska are the worst streets I've ever driven on. I hit a nasty-ass bump, and something happened. Oh, sorry. My phone is trying to talk to me. I hit a bump. Something happened. I don't know what. I heard a clunk, and then my check engine light came on. And I'm like, oh, God, no. I'm going to have to go find somebody tomorrow to look at my car. They probably won't be able to get me in for at least a week. I am probably stuck here staying with my nephew for a while, which isn't a big problem. I'm retired. I got the time. He's got the space, and if I stayed there for any length of time more than a week, I'd pay him for living there. So anyway, it wasn't a big problem from that perspective. It's just I didn't want to do it. I wanted to get out and go back home. So the first thing I did the next morning was I called up Norm's Auto. These guys are great. Lincoln, Nebraska, about 4 blocks at 40th and A Street. They're awesome. Take your cars there. I've been doing that for years. I'm actually upset that now that I've moved, there is a local mechanic, but my electric car I think might be a problem with him. Anyway, so we have the car is having problems, and there's no way I'm going to drive across 2 states with the check engine light on. So I called the math and I said, listen, guys, I know you probably can't get me in for a week, but can you at least just look at it? Tell me whether I'm looking at something that's going to be relatively cheap or expensive, or if it's going to take a long time or a short time. Can you take a look at it? And they're like, yes, we can. Awesome. Got it in. The same day on Monday, they called me almost right away and said, hey, this is going to be a minor thing. I don't even remember what it was. It isn't going to cost much, so we can just take care of this right away. Awesome. Wonderful. Because they had the car up, and their auto parts store is literally across the street. These guys, should be giving each other cuts for everything. So they had the car up. They went across the street, got the part, put it on, dropped it down, called me. Awesome. I was all set. Everything taken care of that Monday. Tuesday, I decided to drive back to Wall from Lincoln. And that's when it really got messy. Okay, so you have to understand, the first thing is I'm driving my Jeep, which is essentially a box on wheels. Behind it, I'm pulling the smallest trailer, the smallest enclosed trailer that U-Haul has, which has my empty caddy and 50 gallons of gas in it. That thing's also a box, which is connected to another box, right? So you have two boxes driving across Nebraska. And the direction I was taking across Nebraska meant that I had no wind brakes between me and roughly, Yellowstone National Park-ish. So the wind was pretty bad. And it was coming straight sideways at me. The only time the wind helps you in those vehicles is when you get a tailwind, and I didn't get one. So for a while, I'm fighting the vehicle, trying to be pushed off the road, which wasn't a huge deal. I knew that was going to happen. It happens sometimes with the Jeep just because of what it is. So then I got into South Dakota, specifically I-90. Now, South Dakota is far enough north that you start to get cooler temperatures, especially in the wintertime. It's not like Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's just plain frigid. It's not like chunks of Alaska. It's not that cold, but it's cold, and you can get a lot of snow. And it had been 72 degrees with the sunny skies 2 days previously, and now it changed, went entirely the opposite direction. I got onto I-90, and what should I find but a giant freaking blizzard? So what was supposed to be a 7 or 8 hour drive turned into an 11-hour drive because I'm stuck in a freaking whiteout. It was terrifyingly bad. I've only seen it this bad one time before, and it was in roughly the same place on the interstate. Got completely invisible. You could not see a thing outside your windows except occasionally, if you looked out, you could sort of make out the outline of some car that had gone into the ditch, so it let you know, oh, that's the ditch over there. Oh, that's the ditch over there, because I can sort of make out this fuzzy shape. The best way that I had to see anything was to roll down my window, hold on to the car thing, and look outside with my head stuck out the window, outside, looking for the white line. I was this freaking close to just getting off and spending the night someplace and saying, screw this. But then something fun happened. Let me see what Patrick says here. You've decided there's literally nothing in my life more important enough that I must drive in such conditions. Yeah, I mean, for me, it just doesn't feel like a big deal because I've been driving in snow since I was 15 years old. 12 years old because I learned to drive out on the ranch. So, I mean, for me, it's just like, okay, well, should I stay in this or should I get off? And I was this close to getting off. But then a bunch of trucks came. And you Gen Xers know what they had. Looks like they had a convoy. Yep, Gen Xers know all about convoys. We know all about CB radios, by the way. I still have something of that in my past here. You can see this is my amateur radio, studying for my amateur radio license. So there was a convoy, as all Gen Xers know from watching C.W. McCall from Old Home and the wonderful song Convoy and the not-so-wonderful movie Convoy. We all know what happens when you have a convoy. Well, They had a convoy, and I had this happen to me once before, and I knew exactly what to do. Now, I didn't have a radio, but I did wait until a couple of trucks got far enough apart that I could slide myself into what I thought was the space between the trucks. And this put me in a great circumstance because these truckers could see much farther, even in bad snow like that, than I can. And what it meant for me was I could sit there and, white knuckle it, but at the same time I can see the lights of this truck in front of me where I couldn't. Seeing a car's lights, forget it. It's just impossible. But you could see the truck's lights. So we went for about 3.5, 4 hours at like 5 miles an hour. We never got above 10 in that whiteout. Never. We made it maybe 30 miles during that entire time we were driving. And then finally the weather cleared and the convoy broke up and I honked at it and a bunch of the truckers on my way past them because the speed limit on I-90 in South Dakota is 80 miles per hour because we want to get you from the the uninteresting part of the state all the way over to the western side of the state where things cost money and we have a big tourist industry. We want to get you across that state quick. So it's 80 miles per hour there, and those truckers never do more than about 70. So when the weather finally cleared up, I pulled out and I started going around them, honking to them as I go by and waving and thumbs up, because with GenX, thumbs up means, great, good job, thanks, as opposed to apparently Gen Z and later who think of it as being the same as the middle finger. I don't get it, but okay. So I finally got home. And I got home with the truck, with the Jeep and the big box behind it, and I took out the caddy, poured 50 gallons worth of gas into it, parked it in a place that's shouldn't be too much of a fire hazard, and if it is, well, I've got a giant tank of propane out here. That's a bigger potential problem. If I have a problem with something that's kind of some kind of fire hazard, probably means it's going to blow up and kill me. So I finally made it home. That was my trip to Omaha, Nebraska to see Karen Morgan perform. And she is amazing. She's awesome. There's a link to it in my description box, but if you go to our website at karenmorgan.com/tour, you can buy tickets for any of her tour dates. She's got quite a number of them coming up through May. I think she's basically, at that point, kind of taking the summer off. I happen to know that because I emailed her and said, hey, listen, if you want to see yourself talked about, or if you want to interact with me and my viewers on chat, on a podcast that gets literally fives of viewers, feel free to, pop in and I'll talk to you. And by the way, I'd be thrilled if I could do an interview with you for the show. And she said, well, I can't watch tonight. I got a show. But what's the URL to watch it later? And I said, well, it's YouTube. Same URL that, works for live is going to work later. And she said, yeah, talk to me in the summer about being on your show when I'm home for a while. And so I think there's some chance that I'll get her on and veer away from the unpleasant politics that I have to deal with from time to time around here. So that's the story. That is a big the end on that particular story. We just did the big curly Q and cursive the end exclamation point. I don't see that going any farther. But that's what happens when you get stupid and you decide that you're going to drive across 2 states to go see a comedian perform their stand-up routine. So, well, Patrick, unfortunately, we've gone through everything that I actually had planned for this evening. So if either you or Jeanette have something you want to discuss, feel free to throw it out there. Otherwise, I may end up having a very short show. This is a problem with me just in general, getting viewers. One thing I discovered about social media, it doesn't help in the slightest to market your own videos. It doesn't help. The only way that it works, that social media really works to be advertising, is if you have a big enough footprint that other people will share links to what you're doing. not you, because I don't have enough reach for it to matter. My followers on all social media are so small. I mean, I don't have more than 500 on any social media platform. And some of those are scammers trying to get my money. So, yeah, YouTube and podcasts feel harder to profit than an MLM. Oh, God, yes. Well, I mean, I can't profit from it at all. I mean, I don't have enough viewers, and I don't expect to ever have enough viewers. You probably haven't seen me talk about this before, but Jeanette says, you got on the algorithm's bad side when I showed the Summer of Love riots, and they have never forgiven me. Oh, I was bad before then. But it didn't do me any good. My political views don't do me any good with respect to the algorithm, the holy algorithm. So, yeah, I don't make any money off of it. I don't expect to ever make any money off of it. One of the things I'm fond of saying on this show is I kind of analyzed it quite a long time ago. And what I discovered was if you really want to have any chance of success, you need to be young, attractive, female, a gamer, and have charisma. That charisma one is the one you cannot do without. You can have all the other ones, but if you don't have charisma, you're not going anywhere. And it's one of the reasons that I am not particularly popular on YouTube or anywhere else. People on YouTube as a younger market, they look at me and they go, look at this old man. And I tell you, until this year when I turned 60, I could fool myself into thinking I wasn't really that old. But now I'm 60. I'm a senior citizen. The audience on YouTube does not want to watch a senior citizen. They want young, attractive female gamers with lots of charisma. You can get away with not being one of the first 4 young, female, attractive, and a gamer. But you got to have the charisma, and there's absolutely, even if you've got it, don't give up your day job. YouTube and things like that are exactly like any other artistic platform. The stage, the screen, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your chances of being successful are infinitesimally small. For every well-known actor, there are 1,000 who are waiting tables, and they will never be successful. The same thing is true on YouTube. So I don't expect to ever make any money off of this. I've been doing this for the better part of 10 years now, believe it or not. So I got videos coming out of my ears. I actually had them cancel one of my channel previously. Fortunately, I had all the videos on it, but I can't re-upload them because, believe it or not, YouTube keeps track of that stuff. If they have killed your channel, they somehow keep track of the video in a way that they know what the footprint looks like. So if you try uploading it again on another channel, you get dinged. So, yeah. That's kind of where it's at. We're now off the page. We've reached a point where I don't really have anything prepared to talk about. Patrick says, I'm reminded of my aunt who toiled in Nashville 1900 to 2000 to become a singer-songwriter. Lots of talent that will never break through. And through nobody's fault. I mean, it's not anybody's fault. I've seen lots of people, particularly YouTube reactors, who meet most of those qualifications. A lot of them are gamers. The reactors are gamers because that's half of what their content is. They react to things, and they also play games or react to the games themselves. So, I mean, it's like, say, yeah, but they're all younger than me. I'm the old man. I get it. I totally get it now. I am, in fact, old. And I'm totally cool with that, but I can't, you can't shake the fact that the audience on YouTube is significantly younger. This is just me, what I've looked at, just personally. I've not looked at any metrics or anything like that, but my guess is YouTube's primary audience is teens and tweens. I say that because I have watched multiple different YouTubers who have been very, very successful die a quick death when they got just a little bit too old. They started to look not like someone's peers anymore, but rather like someone's older brother or sister, or worse, a parent. What you're looking for on some of that is somebody who is a peer. And I am, at best, someone's father. In real life, I could be somebody's grandfather. That's the reality. I'm an early enough Gen Xer that I could be somebody's grandfather at this point. I have great nieces and great nephews, so I mean, I could have grandkids. I have some kids that age just floating around. Jeanette says the lives you watch have more people around your age. Yeah, I mean, Gen X is making something of a splash right now. That's why I'm happy doing these Gen X stories, and why I stole the whole concept straight from Karen Morgan. Gen X is starting to put more of a footprint down. I think that's mostly because somebody went and kicked the bear. We were happy just not giving a crap about anything. Hell, they kicked the bear, and we barely care about anything. But they went and kicked the bear. Later generations went and kicked the bear for some reason and started trying to trash talk us, and a bunch of Gen X comedians came in to the rescue. And Karen Morgan was one of those. But a bunch of the Gen X comedians came in to the rescue, and so we've started having more of a footprint on social media and places like YouTube than we did before. But again, I think it's only because somebody went and kicked a bear, and otherwise we don't care. We don't care about anything. I mean, the phrase "you have apparently mistaken me for somebody who gives a crap" is entirely descriptive of Gen X. I actually have memes that I create because I don't use canned memes. If I find a canned meme that I want to use, I retool it. I find a better version of the picture and watermark it with Tales from SYL Ranch on it. So, excuse me. So, yeah, I lost my train of thought. This is what happens when you're just now going past the point where you've done any prep work whatsoever, but hope you have some more time, which is probably fooling myself because it is, after all, Friday night. This is not a good time to have these. That younger audience that I was talking about, they're off doing something else. The guys are chasing girls or playing video games, and the girls are probably chasing guys and playing video games. But this is not a good time to be doing this. I get that. I'm just not sure what a good time is. There are so many people in this kind of science fiction-y space, and the kind of space with politics in it, and where it crosses over, some of the really big names. They do stuff on Fridays. Then there's other ones that do stuff throughout the week. So I'm like, when the hell do you schedule this? When is a good time that people will actually be able to come? I don't know. It's not now. I know that. But Patrick says they don't, though. They stay home and game or vape. Yeah, there is a lot of that going on. That you get into a whole other matter that I can talk about, that I occasionally talk about, but not very frequently. Here we have my little, you can barely see it on there. It's a straight line with an arrow pointing out to the side. This is the symbol of the what am I trying to say? Men Going Their Own Way movement, or MGTOW, 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 and I'm generally on the same page with them a lot of the time. Patrick says, I'd like to see Gen Z go get out and get together in person. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have no social skills. And I don't know how, because, I mean, it totally escapes me. How do these people even find a mate? I mean, getting together with somebody online appears to me to be actually about sex. Netflix and chill, I think, actually translate to Netflix and screw. And all you're getting to know is somebody online. And I mean, Patrick, you and I have only ever known each other online, but I would never for a nanosecond think about entering into a romantic relationship with you, even if I was the correct gender. I don't know if I am or not. But I certainly wouldn't enter into a romantic relationship with you because I don't know what you're like in real life. I think you're a decent guy. I think you'd be a great guy to get along with, But there may be things that go on. Maybe I scratch myself in such a way that it really bugs you. Maybe there's something about your voice that just grates on me. I mean, you got to be in person. You got to spend some time with the person. How the hell do you do that? And you can't get to know somebody at work anymore because that's just an HR incident waiting to happen. How the hell do people find a mate? I mean, you know, if you go off of online dating, you're not going to keep a mate very long. I don't know how they do it. I have no idea how they do it. Love you too, Patrick. Patrick says, my parents worried about me staying out late and getting in trouble after midnight. I worry about my kids never doing so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Gen X. I mean, we were God, I really don't want to steal from Karen Morgan, but she had the best observation about us I have ever known. I'm going to steal it. Sorry, Karen. I'm just going to steal the sentence. Karen says that we didn't have helicopter parents. We had the opposite of helicopter parents. We had Home Depot parents, which is where it looks like there should be someone around there who can help you, but there's not. No one's coming. It's just you. That is a little snippet, little tiny one-line snippet of her material. Go and see the woman. She's fantastic. But that is a brilliant assessment of us. Yeah. Free-range kids. Yes, Patrick, I've heard the term. It isn't. I'm now removed from it by 2 generations. My kids are now grown. They're 30-ish now, getting into 30-somethings. So, I mean, I'm kind of removed from it. And that's okay with me because at this stage of the game, I'm perfectly happy being the grandfather type who gets given the kids for a couple of hours, and then I can turn them away. I can spoil them for a while and then send them back. So I'm not, really much. Lenore Skenazy, I don't know who that is. So, but yeah, free-range kids, I've heard the term. Basically, it's just like Gen X. Our whole childhood. So, but yeah, that's something I worry about too. I mean, you know, the fact that you have this lack of social skills is one thing, one bad thing. But you know, you have to. I don't remember what I was saying. But you know, the kids. We should have let them go out on their own more. The thing about it was the world seemed a hell of a lot more dangerous to us than it did when we were kids. And there may be some truth for that, depending on where you live. There may not. If I'd not divorced, my kids would have grown up on a 2.3-acre country lot with foresting and a small piece of lake in the back. And the nearest neighbors were 2 kids that were also about the same kids, the same age as my kids. And so they had those kids they could play with. It was nearly a rural environment, you know, way out on the edge of the metro area in Sioux City. And, you know, they had things like snakes to pick up and mess with. And fortunately, there weren't any that are dangerous, a lot of garter snakes. And frogs to mess with. And we could be happy just saying, yeah, that was the other thing, too, because it was something we heard all the time, right? Nobody arranged a play date for us. What happened was the beginning of the morning, on Saturday morning, our mothers said, kids, go outside and play. Boom. Slammed the door, maybe even locked it behind us. So, see you later, Patrick. Catch you later. If I'll be around generally the last Friday of any given month, I do this. And then I have videos that I release throughout the month, both here and on my second channel, which you may be very interested in, the Tales from SYL Ranch Darkroom. Go there, and you're going to see some public domain movies and a whole bunch of clips from different movies that I have upscaled to 4K and to 60 frames per second. So it's very cool. You get to watch some stuff from Star Trek in that, some stuff from Star Wars in that, a whole bunch of superhero stuff in that. If you want to see Captain America catch Mjolnir in 4K and 60 frames per second, it looks wonderful. So go check that out. Anyway, see you later, Patrick, if you haven't wandered out already. Anyhow, yeah, thanks, Patrick. I bought a whole rendering computer just to do what I want to do with that. Yeah, the problem with generations after Gen X is because they basically lived all their lives indoors. Particularly now, they have no social skills. I don't know how you even find a mate. How do you get married when you can't really get to know anybody? Because knowing somebody, unless it's been like me and Patrick have been doing this for decades, even thinking that you have a conception of what a person is like, most of the time is inaccurate. You on top chat? I don't think so. Anyway, yeah, I don't remember where I was going with this now. If anybody thinks of it, let me know. Anyhow, so here we are finally back in the new Tales from SYL Ranch Studios, permanently settled here. Not going to be going anywhere. I don't have any big trips to make to drag things around. However, I'm now only 5 hours from the Colorado border. Right across the border in Sedgwick, Colorado, right off of I-80, is this town Sedgwick that has 4. It's a little town. It's not much bigger than Wall, and it has 4, count them 4, marijuana dispensaries. I anticipate making a couple of trips. But you didn't hear me say that, because God knows I wouldn't want to drag something like that across 2 state lines. Anyway, yeah, that's the only that's the only trips of any kind that I'm expecting to make that isn't to Rapid City until, I don't know, sometime in the summer when some family stuff will come up. But I will be making a lot of trips, and I'll be finally getting around to doing maybe some live streams out there, but certainly some video. I'm going to finally go out to the Davis Homestead Reserve and actually start renovating the place, because it's now getting to the point where almost at the point where I can go out there and it's not going to be muddy because it's still raining and stuff, and it's cold from time to time. Oh God, it's gotten up to 80 and then it's gotten down to 30. I mean, this is what happens in this part of the country. In this whole part of the country, the weather is not stable. It vacillates wildly between in the summer and the spring and the fall. It just vacillates wildly between incredibly hot, incredibly cold, or something like that, really nice, really bad, for a couple of months. We're almost to the end of that. And when that happens, then I can finally go out there and be assured that it'll be relatively warm, and the only thing I'm going to have to worry about is watching out for the damn rattlesnakes. But I'm going to actually get out there, take some footage. I'd kind of like to buy a drone for out there, but I'm reasonably certain that my second cousin guy, who is within spitting distance of me, would not appreciate a drone anywhere near his property. So maybe when he passes away. But I am going to get out there and spend some real time out there doing some real work on it. But that'll be the Jeep on every trip, and I'll be actually using the gas in that caddy probably to make those trips, because I'm using the gas now for the foreseeable future. Because 50 gallons will take me quite a ways in a Toyota Prius. You can go quite a ways. You can easily go to say Sedgwick, Colorado, in only a few gallons. So, Patrick, hey, still here. Being in between lets me comment on both generations with a bit of perspective. Gen X talks about pot in hushed tones. Millennials brag about it to anyone within earshot. Okay, I've been there once before. You're right, hushed tones. That was one of the biggest deals that, going to that state and looking at stuff, I was like, wait a minute. I can actually talk about this openly. It doesn't have to be something like, I'm like, okay, I might go down to Colorado. I mean, I still would never dream of leaving Colorado with anything illicit like that. That would be bad. I would never do that. But when I was there visiting, and I have a relative in Colorado whom I'm certain that I was visiting, it was very interesting to be able to talk openly about what I wanted. Most of the time, like in college, you're at the mercy of whatever's available. It's like, okay, well, give me a couple $100 worth, and you're mercy of whatever's available. You're also at the mercy, to some extent, of getting older, because as I've gotten older, I've gotten some issues with my lungs. Smoking anything is a very bad idea for me. And the thing about going to a place like that is not only can you talk about it openly, but you can okay, so what are the best edibles? Something that isn't going to kill my lungs anymore. What can I get for that? You can talk to them out loud, and, it was a very busy place. So I expect to probably be making another trip there soon. Tomorrow. So those are the only trips I'm going to make. And that one, like I say, a couple, 3 gallons of gas for the whole trip. So, yeah. And lest you think ill of me because of that, the deal on that is that I have a severe anxiety disorder. It's well treated with medications, but one of the things that makes it better is that substance. So I use it in a controlled fashion regarding that. What's the figurine to the right? Let's see, that's your right. You talking about this over here, or I'm never sure. This is my right. There isn't much of anything over here, so I assume you're talking about here. This is my drink container. Then I've got my amateur radio, and let's see on the logo. Oh, on the logo itself. Okay, yeah, sorry. That right there on the logo is a jackalope. Ever since I started doing videos coming up on damn near 10 years ago, I've been a total failure and a flop for a decade, the better part of a decade. When I started doing my show, one of the ways that I branded it is, kind of this Old West thing, right? Behind me, I've got to get another angle for this camera so you can see it. But behind me, I have an actual real live wooden phone. And it functions. On the other side here, you have a regular old landline phone. But I can dial on the landline and then use that one to actually do the talking on it. So one of the ways that you thought it was sitting on the desk for a sec? No, it's just where it happened to land. And it won't be that way the next time I set up my camera. But in any case, one of the ways that I branded myself was kind of this Old West kind of brand. You're talking to me, you're talking to a guy who grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, now owns 3/5 of his family ranch land. I live now in a small town of Wall, South Dakota, a big tourist trap in South Dakota. Yeah, you're very glad the phone works? Yeah. Me too. My dad fixed it up so that it would work. He actually put a dialer on it. But because of where it was sitting at the time, I just decided to screw this. I'm just going to plug it in and use the other phone to dial with. So, anyhow, you like having such old things too, but only if they work. What you can't see around here is what I like to call the Tales from SYL Ranch Studios and the Green Room, which is my living room. One of the things that I've got in there is an Isher Artifacts weapon. You're old enough that maybe you heard of Isher Artifacts. Depends. They started in the 1970s. I hate getting up to do this, but let me get up and I'll just get it. And I have completely just ruined the illusion by showing you that, in fact, all I'm wearing is a pair of shorts. So, Patrick says he'd love to get a pinball machine, but you're sure that they are a chore to keep running? Yeah, I bet they are. A lot of mechanical parts, probably. If something breaks, you're probably going to have to do it yourself. Anyway, what I pulled off the wall, it's actually inside behind a case, because this is an actual antique. This is my Isher Artifacts Model A pistol with the serial number A013. I have been back and forth with the guy who manufactured this, who actually made all of these, and we've been able to identify which one it was and when he made it, under what circumstances, who he sold it to, and how it probably got to me. So anyway, this thing's really cool. I don't have a battery in it. If I did, you could pull this little switch that it has for a trigger, and it would shoot a light beam that would at least light up the end of this. This is just plain old plastic tube. It's totally full. There's nothing that's going to shoot a beam out or anything like that. It's just for show. But they are very cool looking. I've had one for decades and decades, and now this is legitimately an antique. It's probably one of the most valuable pieces of merch that I have. I don't think there's anything else in this house that comes close to what this is probably worth now today. So, don't remember where I was in that other story. As I said when I came in tonight, Patrick says, got any Star Trek props that you can show and tell? Not really. I'm going to have a whole show on this at some point. Believe it or not, Patrick, Marshall and I have discussed stuff a lot. He's actually something of a producer on this show. He has acted in the capacity of a producer on numerous occasions. He has helped me a lot with some of the technical things that go on, particularly with voice mixing and stuff like that, and doing it all on this computer that I've got. So Marshall is helping me out with all this stuff. And no, he does not live nearby. He still lives where he always did, which is half a continent away from me. But, we still communicate, and he's able to help me out with this stuff. So anyway, he's getting a thing together. He's writing a thing that will allow me to take the program that I use for doing the streaming, which is OBS, the Open Broadcast Software. It's free software that you can use. Everybody on YouTube does this. What's more difficult to get in is other people. It's possible to do, but it's a pain in the ass, and it's really hard to deal with the audio mixing. Marshall's working it out so that under the hood, I'll be able to put up as many people as I can in any given screen and not have to worry so much about everything. So I'm going to be doing that with Karen Morgan. But the thing about the props is I have a whole show somewhere down the line when he's done with all that, and it could be a while, where I'm going to talk about how I had to distance myself from Star Trek fandom. The crap that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins make is bad enough. But the only fans that new Star Trek has attracted are a-holes. Complete a-holes. They're people that I do not want to associate with and do not want to risk being associated with. So a lot of my Star Trek stuff is now in storage. I do not have the Star Trek stuff sitting out. I do not want to be associated with Star Trek fandom anymore. I have a whole show about this. I'm going to have guests and stuff. But, God, the fans coming up now are horrifyingly bad people. And I can't be associated with them anymore. So a lot of my Star Trek stuff is now sitting in my storage shed about 5 minutes from here. So... But as for the other thing, Marshall does not live nearby. Neither of us have altered where we live significantly. I still live in the Upper Great Plains, within a few hundred miles of where I used to live when anytime we were doing anything with the Echo. And Marshall still lives where he lives. Yes, you find that you're not interested in joining fandom in any media. Yeah, that's the case with all of what I consider our beloved franchises, because they've all been turned to crap. Star Wars, I can't be associated with it. It's just crap. I mean, if you want to be real about it, the last time there was a really good Star Wars movie was The Empire Strikes Back. Everything in mainline movie-wise. I know there's been a lot of stuff that's been done ancillary, and some of that's really good. But mainline movie-wise, last time they had a good one was Empire Strikes Back. So anyway, what they've done with Star Wars now is turned it completely down the tubes. It isn't so much that I dislike it anymore, it's that I don't care. And I don't care about Star Trek very much anymore either. What bothers me is the fans that are showing up. These are not like people like you and I, Patrick, or Marshall. When we were first starting out getting together, these are miserable, horrifying people that, I tell you, the one that really blew my mind. I'm a political. I'd like to call myself a political libertarian until I could no longer support the Libertarian Party. Now I just call myself a classical liberal. So. The fandom that these is attracting is just a-holes. One of them decided that there was no way someone who is not a leftist could legitimately be a Star Trek fan, and then went on an extremely long multi-tweet rant about what a horrifying person I am. I mean, it just went on forever. And I'm Gen X, and more than that, I was fans of Star Trek at a time when that got you beat up by bullies, so I could really care less what anybody thinks. But they've killed Star Wars, they've killed Star Trek, they've killed everything. Indiana Jones, man. I mean, there was something that should have just been put to bed after The Last Crusade and been done with it. They should never have done sequels. But they've killed it. They've just killed it. Patrick says, I realize that going overboard as a fan of any media production makes you boring to 99% of the world. And rightfully so. What we had in Star Trek in the 90s was very different then. Any similar fan group today, just not well adjusted. Oh, totally agree. I have one of my homemade memes that's got it's just a cartoon of a guy who's sitting there screaming into his computer with arrows pointing out, going to the world that say things like, anger, fear, et cetera, all these things. And my part of the meme says, if you grew up with social media, you're probably a jerk. Which is true, because people who are growing up now, when we were kids, right, you'd talk about politics, about over the backyard fence with your neighbors, but you had to self-moderate, because if you really let loose, you ran the risk of offending somebody, making somebody cry, or getting yourself punched in the face. You had to self-moderate. You couldn't just spew out anything and then say bad things about the person you're having the conversation with, which is all it is now. So, yeah, I can't deal with that. As Patrick says, yes, yeah. The problem, Patrick, and I'm sure you're running into it too, is now at our age we've now seen enough that we can really see differences. That's what I notice more than anything, and that may be why Gen X is having something of a resurgence on social media, on YouTube, because we're now getting old enough, we are the grandparent age, when we can look around and say several things. One, age is wasted on the young. God knows it was wasted on me. But we can also look at things like science fiction. And at this point, there's nothing new. It blew my mind that everybody in fandom was such a big fan of the River Song arc with Doctor Who. And while I give it to the showrunner there, that was an arc that he clearly, meticulously thought out in advance for that entire Doctor's tenure. That's an extraordinary thing. The fact that I knew in advance what was coming, every single step of the way. I guess is just me being old enough to have seen so much science fiction that you can't surprise me anymore. So, with that, I'd say the River Song story arc, I give him a lot of credit. That must have been a managerial a nightmare to make. But it was an extraordinary thing to have done. It's kind of like the MCU for the first 10 years. It's an extraordinary accomplishment to have done that at all. Anyway, what the hell time is it? It is now about 10 minutes to 10 my time, so it's midnight out on the East Coast. Patrick says, are you the only one that thinks that Star Trek Discovery is Doctor Who with crying and hugs? Doctor Who's crying now. I mean, that's another one that they've ruined, is Doctor Who. I mean, God, here's what they did. This freaking woke got into Doctor Who, right? And with the female doctor, with her, they just said, okay, she's a woman. We don't have to do anything else. We don't have to write compelling stories. We don't have to do character development. She's a woman. That's all. We'll just put stories with a woman as a doctor. Look, it's a woman. It's a woman. No characterization, nothing. There was no connection between that doctor and the previous ones who'd been so tortured by the Time War and all that. It was just, they said, screw it. We don't need to do any of that. And then they moved over, changed that doctor. They went backwards, something that Doctor Who has never done in its history before. They went backwards and got an old doctor and an old companion so they could then move forwards with another woke doctor, this time a black gay doctor. Like, anybody even really cares about his sexuality, and nobody cares about his skin color. So, but they've done the same thing again, and I've stopped watching that show too. I stopped watching Star Trek. I have largely stopped watching. I mean, I don't even pirate it. And if you know me, and if you've watched anything, I pirated everything. I don't pay for nothing. So, I mean, I do not pay for anything ever. And I don't even pirate Star Trek. I do not even pirate Doctor Who. I do not even pirate Star Wars. I am so totally over all of them. Completely over them. Don't care anymore. Just don't care. And in Star Trek's case, when you're dealing with something that I've been with since 1967, that is a hell of an accomplishment, Alex Kurtzman, you hack fraud, and your mafia of character assassins. So, I just don't care. And the fifth new season of Doctor Who, I mean, really, if you go through there, you're going to hit a point where you have the Day of the Doctor. Now, Doctor Who keeps getting better and better and better and better, right up until Day of the Doctor. And that is the best Doctor Who episode ever written. Period. Hands down, done. There is no other episode of Doctor Who in the entire franchise's 60 years history that comes even close to the Day of the Doctor. And because of that, there was nowhere to go but down. The showrunner at that point hit a giant peak. It was a peak that no one else will ever come close to. And he had nowhere to go but down. And that's what he did. He took the next Doctor and made him dark and kind of awful, which is a problem because it's unfortunate because the guy who played the Doctor, Peter Capaldi, is a giant fan of Doctor Who, and you could tell he was having the time of his life, but unfortunately he was given some material that was just terrible. But yeah, I would go ahead and watch it. Go ahead and find it and watch it from 2005 through at least Day of the Doctor. The Day of the Doctor really is the summit peak of all Doctor Who, period. If you watch it through that, you'll be great. Watching after that gets more difficult, and the current Doctor just sits there and cries all the time. He cries, he runs away from danger. He is not the Doctor that we saw in previous incarnations of him. He's awful. I mean, it's not the actor's fault. He's doing the best he possibly can. It's like Jar Jar Binks, doing the best you can with crappy material. So, by chance you stopped after Matt Smith, I would go on with Matt Smith because that's where they get into the River Song story arc, and I don't want to spoil that for you. It is an amazing time travel arc. Now, you may be lucky, but you and I are similar age. We've seen a lot of science fiction. That's why I could see it all coming. But you may find it more surprising than I did. I don't know. But you will walk away from it going, my God, that man planned out a story arc that went through the entire Doctor's tenure. All of Matt Smith's has this giant story arc that he wrote. And it's freaking amazing. Not that I saw it coming. But I still go, no one will ever do that. No one in a time travel show will ever accomplish what he did with that arc ever again. So, I'll tell you what, it is midnight out on the East Coast. I've been at this now for a couple of hours. It's 10, 11, 12. And while I'm thrilled to have you in here, Patrick, I'm obviously not getting a ton of people in. As I say, I got 5 of viewers. Feel free to come in again. As I say, typically it is the last Friday of any given month. This time it went different because I had weird things going on last week. But typically that's when it'll be. And I think I'll do the next one. Let me look at a calendar here real quick. Yeah, I'll do the next one in 4 weeks on the 30th. So I'll be here on the 30th for that. If anybody has any ideas about a better time to schedule this on YouTube so more people will watch it, feel free to let me know. I've been struggling with it for years. I can't come up with a good one. So, yeah, have a good evening. And, stay around through my end credits. You will appreciate them, Patrick. You will definitely appreciate my end credits. Stay around through them, all the way through the end. So, as I often say, that is all the time that we have tonight for this episode of the Late Stardate. As always, please like, sub, hit the notification bell, share me on social media, and tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. If you want to follow me on X, I am at SYL Ranch. So, thanks for watching the Late Stardate, because it's always late somewhere in the world. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.